Okay, so I guess the question that the students will probably ask you as teachers and careers advisors really is, is Swansea University Medical School any good? So, we are really pleased that we've had some excellent ranking news quite recently. So the Times newspaper puts us as third in the UK, and that's out of 34 medical schools in total. According to The Guardian, we're seventh in the UK as well, and top in Wales. And in the most recent ref as well, we were first in the UK for research environments. So things we're really pleased with. And quite recently as well, in the area of genetics, we were second overall in the UK for student satisfaction. And that's just the medical school, but also Swansea University as a whole. Well, The Guardian ranks us as a top 25 university. That's out of about 120 or so universities in the United Kingdom, and a few sort of other accolades we've got listed as well. So TEF Gold in terms of our teaching excellence. That's great to see for future students, I think. And also in the student survey, we were sixth overall in the UK for student satisfaction. I know most of you are joining us from the UK. Some of you are joining us from overseas as well, which is great. So really just want to highlight just briefly where, exactly where Swansea University is. So right in the heart of Swansea, the second largest city in Wales, so a big population of over 250,000. We've got two spectacular campuses right on the seafront. And then you don't have to go far to be in the Gower Peninsula, where there's a huge, I guess, variety of outdoor things you can do there in terms of surfing, hiking and trekking. A lot to do. We're very close to the international airport at Cardiff, less than an hour away by car. You can get to the heart of London in less than 3 hours, and also by car we're less than 4 hours from the north west of England as well. So very much a university you can easily get to from anywhere in the UK or the world. And here's just a couple of example photographs of what it's actually like to study at Swansea, and what you've actually got right on your doorstep, these wonderful beaches. So also very close to the city centre, where you can get sort of trains and buses really to anywhere in the United Kingdom. And also quite recently, it was announced that Swansea is thought to be the third most affordable student town in the UK. So that's great for students in that their money's going to go a little bit further when they're here in terms of their rent and going out more generally. So, there's a whole host of sort of different courses available within the medical school. There's research and postgrad taught as well, and you'll see details of all of those on our website. So we're just going to really focus on the undergraduate courses and our graduate entry medicine course today. So just to highlight some of the undergraduate degrees we've got, so applied medical sciences, biochemistry and medical biochemistry, biochemistry and genetics and medical genetics. We've got medical pharmacology, population health and medical sciences, and new this year is the pharmacy course, which is starting. And so all of those are available as BSc courses. MSci courses are available for biochemistry and genetics and programs, and there's also foundation options as well. And then we've got the graduate entry medicine program, which you need an upper second class degree at undergraduate level in order to qualify for that. Okay, so there's quite a lot of information on these next couple of slides. I'm just going to highlight a few key points, but you will be able to access the recording of the presentation afterwards if you want to look at this in a little bit more detail. So the first course really to highlight, so applied medical science. And what you'll see that some of these programs have got pathway to medicine written underneath them. And I'll explain a little bit more about what that means in a couple of slides time. So applied medical science, or AMS, that's I guess one of its I guess, key factors is the amount of, I think, anatomy which is present in that particular course. More so than many other medical science or biomedical science courses around the UK, and you can expect to be doing cell biology, genetics as well, pharmacology. And listed right on the right hand side, you can see the various sort of career options which are sort of possible to someone who graduates Swansea University with an AMS degree, in terms of things such as drug development, lab research, clinical trials and regulation, and so on. The next one I'll highlight is medical pharmacology. So pharmacology is very much the action of drugs on the body. So we're looking at the effects of drugs on living systems, how they can treat diseases. So another pathway to medicine course. So you can expect to be doing sort of toxicology, genetics, pharmacology. Also some of the elements of chemistry are brought in as well, and sort of similar career options as well, perhaps more slanted towards the pharmaceutical industry, with medical pharmacology, and through sort of further study and training, you could then go into options such as patent law, for example. Then next, a population health and medical sciences, or another pathways course. So the next big thing in healthcare, according to Monster Jobs. So this is very much sort of looking at, I guess, sort of medical sort of sciences as a whole, thinking about sort of social economic factors as well. In terms of some of the career options, these are perhaps sort of thinking more now towards looking at sort of how healthcare systems are run, health research. And although we talk about NHS management as well here, I think even if you're joining us from overseas, I think this type of program is very much suited to sort of healthcare management across the globe, and not just in the United Kingdom. And next slide, please, Emma. Okay, then we have a biochemistry. So in biochemistry, looking at chemical processes that occur within living organisms, and just to highlight some of the topics, so metabolic regulation, molecular biology being introduced here as well. And that sort of opens up career options, again, looking into biotech, and then also sort of biofuels, bioinformatics, so very much sciences of the future. And I think we'll sort of see more and more demand for biochemists in these particular areas over the coming years. And we also have a sort of a pathway to medicine variant of biochemistry, which is the medical biochemistry course. So here we've got perhaps a more sort of greater focus on sort of clinical biochemistry, human immunopathology as well. So again, very much sort of preparing you potentially for a future role in healthcare. Genetics, again, becoming increasingly important, and many of the new modern therapies coming out require prescribers to have an understanding of genetics. So we'll be teaching you about molecular biology, biostatistics, molecular genetics as well throughout this. And I think sort of very much genetics is becoming increasingly important in sort of the pharmaceutical sciences, in the development of advanced therapies as well. Then going on to medical genetics as well. So it's the pathways variant of our genetics course. Next slide, please, Emma. So just here, sort of just highlight, I guess, a wealth of different career options that those bachelor's degrees within the medical school could potentially lead you to, in things such as clinical science, R&D, a variety of different career options within the pharmaceutical industry. That could be in R&D, but equally it could be in sales and marketing as well. And thinking about sort of some sort of moving away from medical sciences, but in the F&B industry, telehealth as well, health promotion as well. All of these sort of career options are there for someone who's got one of our BSc programs. But also you can see sort of in the left panel right at the bottom as well is the option to then go on and study to train as a doctor or maybe a physician associate. And those are courses which we also deliver within the medical school. Okay, so what if you want to become a doctor? And I know you'll hear more from Ross a little bit later on. So we have our pathways to medicine route within the medical school. So really, if the degree has medical in the title, that generally means it's one of our pathways to medicine courses. And these really are very much sort of ideal fifth choice UCAS options if you're applying perhaps for undergraduate medicine, where you can only apply for 4 medical courses and you've got the option of a 5th. And this is something I think your students might want to consider. And eligible students who choose a pathway to medicine, so you benefit from a specific module in the second year of the studies, sort of looking at sort of healthcare related placements within the course. We'll give you specialist advice on preparing applications, and then there's a guaranteed interview for our graduate entry medicine course, provided you perform satisfactorily throughout your degree. Okay, so just going back to that 5th choice, so just play a short video now which gives a bit more information about that route.
A pathway to medicine is a structure that exists within some of our BSc programs. It's for students who want a guaranteed interview for our graduate entry medicine program, but are keeping their options open, possibly as a 5th choice in their UCAS form when they're applying for undergraduate medicine, or they know that they want to do a first degree.
Sorry, that was my fault. We'll start again. Apologies, my internet jumped.
A pathway to medicine is a structure that exists within some of our BSc programs. It's for students who want a guaranteed interview for our graduate entry medicine program, but are keeping their options open, possibly as a 5th choice in their UCAS form when they're applying for undergraduate medicine, or they know that they want to do a first degree before they apply to graduate entry medicine. Mostly medical sciences type degrees for students who want to explore their passion for medicine. There are a range of other career options which our graduates go on to, but there is that pathway there for those students who want them.
The Pathways to Medicine courses are an excellent foundation for going into graduate entry medicine because firstly it gives you a chance to enjoy Swansea and to get a little taste of what it's like to be in university. It's also a great backup choice if, like me, you don't get into medicine the first time. It gives you another chance to apply through your 5th choice and to get around to medicine in the long run. It also prepares you for what it's going to be like to be a doctor and to work with patients every day, and that's invaluable.
Great. So thanks for playing that one. So in terms of exactly how the pathway to medicine works at Swansea University, so you choose one of the pathways degrees, and then you're through that you're studying the science that underpins medicine. So I mentioned the bespoke module that we have, healthcare placements, and we'll give you that advice on the application and interview. Okay, so in the degree overall and in that pathways module in the second year, you need to gain 60% average overall and then 60% in that specific module. You need to sit the GAMSAT, and you would typically do that towards the end of your second year, then the beginning of the third year. And and then I guess the really key thing about the pathways route that we've got here is that really you've then got that guaranteed interview. So as long as you get a minimum score in the GAMSAT of at least 50, then we'll guarantee you that interview. So you've then got the opportunity to sell yourself in front of our interviewers, and then ultimately you need to get that upper second class degree, so graduating with that from the university. And then that's it. Go on and study the GEM course at Swansea University. Okay, so I've got one eye on the clock, so I'll whiz through this a little bit. So I think what's really key about graduate entry medicine, particularly our course here in Wales. So it's a 4-year degree. So you've got lots of early clinical exposure, which Ross will talk more about. Lots of case-based learning with Case of the Week. We have a spiral integrated curriculum, so we're bringing together the science with the patient practice as well. And there's, I think, many benefits of actually joining as a graduate, as opposed to going straight into undergraduate medicine, that you've gained some life experience already. You've learnt from your previous experience at university. You've got other career options. You might decide after 3 years that actually you don't want to study medicine. So you've got that first degree already. And there's lots of evidence that actually some of the best prepared doctors have actually come via the graduate entry route. Okay, so just for the last couple of minutes, I'm just going to finish up by talking about our new pharmacy course. So this starts September 2021. The first time, and this is actually the first new pharmacy course in Wales for 100 years. We'll be looking to recruit around about 40 students in our first intake, and then building up as we go through future intakes. So in terms of what we do on a pharmacy course, so very much bringing together sort of science and practice. So we pharmacists sort of train as scientists and clinicians. So you've got that unique perspective, which very much makes you the experts on the medicines that you use. Pharmacy is a large registered healthcare profession, third just to the medical profession and nursing, but it's a very well rewarded profession, so you can expect a high starting salaries. So straight from the training year, you can expect to go into a job potentially with a salary in the range of 30 to 40,000 pounds per year in a variety of different settings. For international students, we have an automatic £2,000 bursary. That's £2,000 for each of the 4 years of the course, and also in terms of placement, you can expect those in all of the different pharmacy settings and in all 4 years of the course. And all students would be interviewed, but we can do this remotely, and indeed we've been doing this all week. We've been conducting multiple mini interviews with students from around the UK. And a whole host of things which pharmacists can do. I'm not going to go into detail, but I think the message I think here is pharmacy isn't just about working in a hospital or in a high street community pharmacy. There are many new roles in primary care, in GP practices, prescribing advisors, and more pharmacists are now becoming independent prescribers. And certainly we expect all of the students who are starting in 2021, by the time they reach the end of their training year, 5 years later, they will then be likely to qualify as independent prescribers. Next slide, please. And just finally, so how do you actually become a pharmacist? So you have to complete the 4-year undergraduate MPharm degree. You then do the 1-year salaried pre-registration training. You sit a registration exam, which is run by the General Pharmaceutical Society at the end of that. And then as long as you meet 1 or 2 other GPHC requirements around things such as DBS, etc., you can then register as a pharmacist. And I think that's all from me. I'm going to hand over now to Dr. Hugh Jones.
Yes, so good afternoon, everybody. I'm actually admissions tutor for genetics and biochemistry degrees, but I'm going to talk a bit more generally now about some of the options that you have available and also how to go about applying. So if we can go to the next slide. First of all, we just want to address the issue of not everybody necessarily wants to aim for medicine. Some students may be more interested in research. And we do have a route here, which is gives people a leg up into getting into research. This is comparing what happens with our BSc and our MSci routes. Now, the MSci route at the moment only applies to the degrees in genetics and biochemistry. So that's any of our degrees that have either genetics in the title, or biochemistry in the title, or both in the title. Okay. And what this allows students to do is to spend an extra year on the MSci pathway. So the first 2 years of the degrees are essentially the same. First year is identical. Second year, there's a slight difference, but not very much. And then the main difference occurs in the third year. So on the BSc, people would do their laboratory research project, which is worth 1/3 of the final year, and would graduate with a BSc. On the MSci degree, on the other hand, instead of doing that third-year research project, students would undertake a specialist lab techniques training module, where they get a bit of experience in the research labs of all the main techniques that are going on and being used in Swansea, and be assessed in those. And then they'd be in a position to go into their fourth year, and most of the fourth year in the MSci consists of a research project. So 100 out of the 120 credits are the research project. There are just 20 credits in other options. There's science communication and enterprise, and those are actually all continuous assessment and can be taken online. So in the fourth year of the MSci degree, it's really like a research master's, and it's at level 7, and you would come out at the end with the equivalent of a master's by research. I think if we just click the animation on that, there is a price to pay for this, and that is to stay on the MSci route. A student has to maintain a 60% average throughout. So the actual entry qualifications will be asking for the higher end of our grades at A level, which my colleague will come on to later, but also students have to obtain 60% at the end of every year to stay on the MSci pathway. And the reason we introduced this degree was because it gives people a better chance of getting a PhD place, and it also gives a fees advantage, in that students are on their undergraduate student loan for all 4 years. So they're guaranteed that funding for their fourth year on the same terms as all the previous years. And this is usually advantageous to students in terms of how much loan they could get, compared with if they did a BSc degree and then did a separate master's, on that. So there's a route into research if students want it, but it's flexible. Possible to move between these two pathways as the student wishes. So if a student wished to apply for grad entry medicine, for example, they could move back to the BSc pathway to go for grad entry medicine. If they decided they didn't want to go for medicine after all and were more interested in research, provided they got 60%, they could move on to the MSci pathway. You don't have to decide all this at the beginning when you apply. If we go to the next slide then, please. So what about assessing students? Well, the UCAS application will be looked at by experienced admissions tutors. And the kind of things we will consider, obviously academic qualifications. We look at GCSEs, we have to have GCSE maths at C, or it's now a grade 4 or above, and GCSE English, and they're essential for grad entry medicine as well. Most of our students come in with A levels, but obviously we have equivalences for all the different qualifications throughout the world, which we will map onto that and make an equivalent offer as far as possible. We place a great deal of emphasis on predicted grades, and they will form the basis for our offer, together with looking at the student's personal statement, which I'll come on to in a moment, and looking at the referee's statement. Now, for grad entry medicine, there's extra qualifications are necessary, as Andrew has said, about the GAMSAT, and also interviews and so on. For the pathways to medicine degrees, we're not going to necessarily require any clinical experience. Obviously, if students are also applying for medicine and they're putting a pathway degree down as their 5th choice, then they will have had some clinical experience anyway. But it's not a prerequisite for applying for the pathways degrees, and nor any additional exams, nor is an interview. Okay, so that is just done on the basis of the qualifications and the predictions. If we can go to the next one then. What are we looking for in a personal statement? Well, I'm sure as you're all well aware there's a lot of guidance already on the UCAS site if people search for it there. A typical sort of personal statement would start off with the first paragraph giving the basic reason for applying. A student's enthusiasm for a subject area, what's turned them on to this particular degree topic, why do they really want to do it, what's inspired them. An opening paragraph on that, a sentence or two there. We'd like to know their ambitions for the future, just an indication of what they're aiming for. Are they interested in research? Would they want to teach? Are they interested in graduate entry medicine, or whatever that's there? What are their particular interests then within the subject area and their interests in higher education? Why are they going for this particular degree, perhaps in a bit more detail? And then moving on to their experience. How have their particular exams, their A-levels, syllabus, how is that relevant? How has that helped them? What other skills have they got? Have they got lab experience? Have they taken part in work experience in labs or in some kind of medically related setting? What sort of achievements have they got from these? And then it's usual to finish off with the wider interests and activities. We want to know about the complete rounded person. So what have they done? Perhaps they've excelled in sport. Perhaps they're eligible for a sports scholarship in Swansea even. Do they have particular interests in music or drama? And all these particular things to get an idea of the rounded person. Now, when people are applying for undergraduate medicine and putting one of our pathway degrees down as their fifth choice, obviously they will have geared their personal statement to medicine, and we're quite happy with that. There's absolutely no need to produce another version of the personal statement for our pathways to medicine degrees. We're used to reading applications which are geared towards undergraduate medicine, towards A100 UCAS codes, and we will take that personal statement as it is. We don't require a rewrite or an alternative version for the pathways to medicine degrees, and this is something that makes some applicants anxious, so you can reassure them that the one personal statement will do. And if we go to the next slide, and the same thing will apply for the reference. You know, whatever reference you write to support your students in applying, then the same references you would put down for graduate entry medicine will apply for our pathways degrees as well. And I'm sure I don't need to teach my grandmothers how to suck eggs on writing student references, but just to go through briefly, and primarily an assessment of academic performance, predicted grades, potential for success, suitability for the particular subject area and career path, some reinforcements of skills and qualities and other achievements. And the one thing here, which is perhaps a little more important than in the personal statement, is something about personal circumstances. Is there something we should be aware of? Are there some family difficulties? Are there some particular difficulties for the students that might impact on their performance? We appreciate you have to have the applicant's consent for these, but some students will not mention anything about a particular area in their personal statement. And if you can do that in your professional references, then it can be of help to us because we can modify our offer accordingly for those students' particular circumstances. If we can go to the next slide then, please. Now, flexibility. I think this is my last slide. And what I want to emphasize here really is our flexibility, not just among our degrees, but in the whole approach. First of all, when it comes to the degrees, we do appreciate that students aren't in a position to decide precisely what they want. I mean, trying to decide whether they really want medical genetics or whether they want to study biochemistry at the A-level stage is going to be a difficult decision. And because we have modular courses, then we have the flexibility for students to change. So they don't have to get themselves into a state about worrying that they have to put the right thing down on the UCAS form, and it's kind of written in tablets of stone that because they put medical biochemistry down on the form, that's it. And if they've made the wrong thing, the wrong choice on the form, they won't get in or they won't be able to change. It's quite the contrary, okay? I mean, I wasn't sure whether I want exactly what I wanted to do when I was at that stage. And at the research level, there's a lot of commonality between our degrees. You know, it's really molecular biology today trying to draw the line about where genetics ends and biochemistry begins, or where pharmacology begins, can be very difficult. A lot of these labels are 20th century labels, and they don't really apply to the research environment. But we're stuck with these labels as they are now. So we have flexibility to change. If a student changes their mind, it's not unusual for us to change their degree when they come in September. I say to students when they come in September, well, if you've had second thoughts, let us know. Provided the A levels are appropriate, we can look at them changing their degree then. And they can also change during the first year and at other stages later on. The further they get in, obviously the more difficult it becomes to change. But we do have flexibility. So it's important to appreciate that what you put on the UCAS form is not written in tablets of stone. Same thing applies with the MSci. Possible to move into the MSci research pathway and to move out of it again. It's possible to come in wanting to aim for grad entry medicine and perhaps change your mind later on. Lots of transferable skills here to be conveyed in these degrees. If somebody is interested in the MSci, for example, then their A-level offer will be a bit higher. Their grades will ask for higher grades, but they have nothing to lose by applying for the MSci, because if they don't achieve that offer, we'll automatically consider them for the BSc. And the same applies to some of our other degrees. You know, there may be more competition for some degrees, a bit more difficult for some to get into when the results come out, but we will look flexibly at that and offer students other possibilities if they're there and available. And I think the final things I want to say on flexibility are, we do appreciate how difficult it is for everybody still with the COVID situation. We know you're all in the position of teaching A-level syllabuses and equivalent syllabuses at the moment, and you don't really know what the assessment situation is going to be, how this coursework and teacher-led assessments and the timing of them is going to come out. So when the results come out, and we're still expecting them to come out at the same time in August, we will look as sympathetically and as flexibly as we can at those results when they come out and try and match appropriate applicants to appropriate degrees. So it's very important, if people have any doubts or any queries, for them to get in touch and to keep in touch with us about developments if they've got an offer from Swansea. I think that's about all I want to say now. I think I've covered everything, unless Emma can remind me if I've missed anything.
No, that's great too. Thank you. A reassuring voice as always.
Hand over to Dr. Healy now, who's going to give you more details on the nitty-gritty of grades and applying.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Jones. So, hi, I'm Dr. Melanie Healy. I'm admissions tutor for our Applied Medical Sciences, Medical Pharmacology and Population Health and Medical Sciences and our foundation programs. So I'm just going to give you a very general overview of the tariffs that we offer. So we are a high tariff undergraduate degree and MSci programs. So generally, and again, as Dr. Jones mentioned, it depends on what program you're applying to, whether we go to the AAB or some of us go down to the BBB level. Again, we do ask for generally 2 STEM subjects, and dependent on which degree you're applying to. So if it's, I don't know, population health and medical sciences, or more genetics or applied medical sciences based, then biology is going to be the main one. Anything with chemistry, biochemistry, pharmacology, and that's in the title, then it's going to be the chemistry A-level or equivalent that we're going to want the higher level in. So it's always best to get in touch, or recommend the students to get in touch with us. What's nice to sort of say is, you know, we do the equivalent. So we look at access courses, BTECs, international baccalaureates, all the different European and international qualifications. We do offer combined offers. I don't know what's happening these days in schools and colleges, but we tend to have students come to us now with maybe an A-level in this, a BTEC in that, and so we will look at combination offers. If they're a 5th choice student, then they're going to generally be 3 STEM A-level type. The other thing that we should mention here is we do require GCSE maths and English at that grade C or level 4 level or above. So it's just trying to make sure that all of the students have that, or if they need to do their resits beforehand, that they're on that and they know what they're doing. We do read all of the personal statements and the references, as Dr. Jones said. So anything that you'd like us to take into consideration, please make sure you recommend students pop it in there, or the references, of course. Okay. In terms of if students don't get the grades, and we do appreciate, we have high tariffs, and we will work with students who show an interest in us, and we like to work towards that. However, sometimes things go a little bit wrong for students, or perhaps they are more aspiring students. Then we do have our foundation level degrees available. We have this for most of our, actually I think we have it for all of our undergraduate programs at the moment. And it's additional year that we like to build into the program. So it becomes then a 4-year undergraduate degree. It can be mature students returning to education. We tend to have mature students coming through the Access or the BTEC routes, or we just have some students that perhaps took a little bit longer to focus in on what they wanted to do and are now, keyed up to what that happens to be. So instead of going back to college to resit grades, if they've just missed out by 1 or 2, then we can take them in. One of the benefits of our foundation year degrees is that we do still cap the numbers. We try to keep it around about that. It varies. So if I took all of the courses together, that we try to keep it around about that 60 to 70 at most, generally more towards the 50 to 60. We take BBC to CCD, and again, it's going to mirror the 3-year course in terms of if biology is the primary subject, or chemistry. So again, any of our pharmacology or biochemistry degrees are going to need chemistry, and then we'll look at that. The foundation students have exactly the same opportunities available to them as the 3-year students, so they still are eligible to that pathway to medicine. What we do say is they need to attain a 60% end of year average to progress onto the year 1, so from the foundation year onto year 1. Okay. So pharmacy's coming online this year, which we're really excited about. So Swansea University has a fantastic history in biochemistry and genetics, and we've got the newer programs that have been around for sort of 3-4 years now, and pharmacy is our latest. So pharmacy, we have an ABB to BBB requirement or equivalence. So that's going to be chemistry plus 1 other STEM subject. That STEM subject can be a number of STEMs, and we can work with you on that. We have the International Baccalaureate equivalent. Again, we're going to need that mathematics and English at grade C or level 4 and above. The only difference between our undergraduate degrees and our pharmacy is that need for that multiple mini interviews for our shortlisted applicants, and that will be for both of our pharmacy and foundation to pharmacy applicants. So just make sure that you advise students on that. If, well, we know from last year things went a little bit wrong with the pandemic and everything else, and Dr. Jones is absolutely correct. We do look at predicted grades. We worked really well during clearing last year with all of the hoo-ha, with the government's changing grading and predicted grades and everything. What we'd like to say is, if all else fails, get in touch with us. We work with our students and our FE and schools. We do like to make sure that we have the best students on the best course, well, not the best course, the right course for them, whatever that happens to be. We will work with you. If you haven't quite achieved the grades that you were expecting, or the students were expecting rather, then we can work with you. We can look at combinations, and I think the most important message is just to get in touch. We worked with schools and colleges quite closely last summer through clearing in terms of taking on board all the extra circumstances. So get in touch is the best advice. Okay, just a little bit on COVID-19. Obviously, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. So what I wanted to just say is Swansea's open. We've been open since September. The quality of our teaching has not changed. If anything, they're getting more from us because we're now doing this blended learning approach where we are actually more accessible to our students. We do online for our large class lectures. So As Professor Morris and Dr. Jones mentioned, in year one, we have a lot of overlap because we have to teach all of the sort of core skills in biochemistry, molecular biology, genetics. So those classes are 300 plus. We can't do that face to face at the moment, so we do that online. However, any tutorials, small group workshops, all of our laboratory practice are face to face with restrictions in terms of decreased class sizes so that there's increased space for social distancing. We have PPE that we provide to all of our students. So the student engagement is really good on campus, and they really have appreciated that this term. Their student engagement events are still being delivered online. We have our student union doing things. We have all of our societies. So we have a lot of great societies in the medical school, and they're still running social events online. Swansea itself is a great location, and as we mentioned, we do have a lot of space, which is great, but it's also great in terms of then being able to do face-to-face and have students come on site. We do have a lot of room for students to move around campus. So yeah, everything's going well at the moment, and we look forward to inviting more and more students to come join with us.
Thank you, Dr. Healy. Okay, next part of the presentation, we're really pleased today that we're joined by one of our current students, Ross. So Ross has done an undergraduate degree with us in medical biochemistry a couple of years back, and then Ross decided that medicine was the route for him. So he followed our Pathways to Medicine programme, and he's now studying graduate entry medicine. So I'm pleased to hand over to Ross, and he's going to share his experience with you today.
Hi everyone. So I think it's really worthwhile just trying to reiterate some of the key messages that the staff have just said. You know, I came to Swansea with a B and 2 Cs, I believe, at A level, and I went on to do medical biochemistry, and I chose that because I wanted to learn a little bit about how our bodies work. For me, that was interesting, and I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do after my degree, and I knew that the Pathways degrees in Swansea, they gave you options, and they really did. I know from my degree, it had 100% graduate employability or further studies. So I knew that if nothing else, you know, if I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do afterwards, this is a degree that I can certainly use. I remember coming down, having a visit on the open day, seeing the beach and the beautiful scenery, and chatting to the staff who were fantastic then, and they were fantastic all through my degree. I really thoroughly enjoyed my time here, so much so that I decided to stay on a little bit more to do another degree. And yes, I did do the Pathways to Medicine. I was in the first cohort of students to do that. I'll talk a little bit about my experience of that going on. Now, one of the first things that I often get asked by students is, what does an average week sort of look like? And so for the undergraduate BSc programs, typically, this is a screenshot from one of them. I don't necessarily want you to worry about the module codes and where the lectures are. You can find that information online. But I really want you to take away that actually it's only about 12 to 15 hours of lectures a week, which is the equivalent of, 2.5 school days of actual lectures. And then you're talking about 4 to 8 hours of labs a week. I should say this is pre-COVID, and hopefully by the time a lot of your students come, it would be post-COVID, and we'll get closer back towards this timetable. But in reality, there's a lot of free time, and I know a lot of students really worry about whether or not they can go to university and they'd be able to cope with doing a degree. And I would just say, well, if you're doing 2.5 days, maybe 3 days a week of work with all the extra stuff you've got to put in outside, I think it's pretty doable. You've still got your weekends and you've still got your evenings. I'll talk a little bit about the Pathways to Medicine now on this next slide. So it's a module that runs for 10 weeks. It's in the second semester, runs for 10 weeks, and there are roughly about 30 lectures. It's completely unlike anything else as part of a science degree, in the sense that you don't sit down and learn the little tiny details about molecular biology and cells. You don't do that. Instead, you turn up into a lecture room, or this year has been you would turn up via Zoom, and you would have an open discussion. There would be a lecturer there, maybe a clinician, a doctor or a surgeon, or maybe a pharmacist or somebody else who's there to talk to you about one particular element of clinical practice. And you just have a discussion and you explore these areas through these seminar style moments. You look at things such as, between a doctor and the patient, there is a relationship dynamic there, and some work better than others, and trying to work with patients to find the right treatment for them. You discuss things such as professional practice. Now, professionalism is a really weird thing, because we can all sort of say if something is or isn't professional, but it's a really hard thing to a hard definition to nail down. And I remember having hours and hours of discussions with staff trying to wrap my head around that. You are given a placement, as Professor Morris said, and on this placement, you're encouraged to reflect on the people you've met, and the patients that you saw, and the staff you interacted with. And that's invaluable come any future applications that you may have. I know I certainly found it really useful. They also encourage you a little bit to think about, well, how might the job of being a doctor or a surgeon in the future change? Because it's all well and good for students who want to go do medicine to do a placement now, but by the time they've done a degree, sometimes they do a degree before they do their medical degree, and by the time they train on the job, and by the time you become that GP or that consultant, you're talking about a decade or more down the road. And so the job as you see it now is not going to be the same. So it's really worthwhile thinking about that, and that's also something that does crop up quite a bit in the interview as well. I've written it allows applicants, from my experience, I found it gave me the opportunity to develop and further refine a lot of key attributes that medical schools seem to look for in their candidates. And to that end, I think actually this Pathways is a really good option for someone who wants to become a good medical applicant, full stop, for any university, really. Not just for Swansea, although there is, as mentioned before, there is the potential guaranteed interview here at Swansea, which certainly attracts a lot of students. I know it attracted me. But if I use myself as an example, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and when I started my degree, and as I was going through it, I thought maybe medicine might be what I wanted to do, and I took this module. I met some fantastic people as part of it. I had amazing support from staff, and in the end I thought, actually, maybe I do want to go for medicine instead. I'd never applied before, and so I applied to 3 universities. I had 3 interviews. I was very fortunate, and I ended up getting 3 offers, and I sincerely don't believe that would have happened had I not come and done the Pathways to Medicine, and had those experiences as part of it. Now, I'm aware that applying to medicine is not necessarily easy. I myself am the first member of my family to go to university. The only doctor I knew was my GP, so it was quite a daunting task. And having sort of come through the other side, as it were, me and a couple of friends who also studied at Swansea in our undergrad, and now do medicine here, we started to develop these medicine workshops that help to focus on different areas of the application process for students who are currently studying here, so that they can get a bit more support, because the staff are really amazing, but there's only so many hours in the day, and they've got a teacher, they've got a mark, and they will move heaven and earth to help their students. And we thought maybe there's a way that we can also help some students and lessen the burden a bit. And so what's really nice for me is, having sort of started and created some of these things, we've had our first group of students come on to graduate entry medicine now who attended these workshops, and it's really nice to see them sort of pay it back and help get involved in running those workshops for incoming students. And I think it's just really nice that you have a lot of support there from both staff and students all around. Now, I've talked a bit about enjoying my first degree. I obviously do medicine now, and graduate medicine is a slightly different beast to undergraduate medicine. I've put a timetable up there so you can see that there's a few more lectures actually compared to the undergraduate. There's more to learn in an average week, but it's broken up in quite a unique way. So we've said about case-based learning, and this essentially boils down to, if you're going to learn about a broken bone, that's great. In a lot of medical schools you learn about broken bones, how to fix them. And in Swansea you learn about David, and David is a 72-year-old man who was walking across Swansea beach with his granddaughter, and he tripped, fell over, hit his arm, hurt a lot, and he's now broken it. And okay, you have lectures that go through how to fix broken bones, how you treat that, and things you need to know about fixing broken bones as a doctor. But at the end of the week, there's something called an expert forum. We have some of the lecturers from in that week, they'll come and they'll sit down, and it's a Q&A session. But where possible, they'll bring David in, and you'll meet David. And he'll tell you about what it was like for him to go through that whole process. And that's a really amazing element of the course, because it all medical courses should be patient-centric because you're learning about how to treat people. But in Swansea, you have such a fantastic early exposure to patients, not just in the way of the normal learning week, but also on Tuesdays, you can book in the first year of the course, you can book half days of placement, we call them blocks, or you can spend the entire day in general practice. And on Thursday, you spend half of your day in sort of a clinical skills room where you learn to use a stethoscope or how to take a history examiner. And when you're taught like that, it's nigh on one-to-one teaching as well, which is truly fantastic. And in the later years of the course, you spend it all on placement, and so you're working something. You'll spend your time studying and learning close to about a 35-hour week or something. So it's a lot more intense. But placements, I'm currently on a placement now. I'm in a hospital now. They're really, really great. I've got some photos there just to sort of explain, because I think Swansea is something that in Swansea you have a lot of opportunities, and you really don't get them in a lot of other universities. I'll explain what I mean. You have relatively smaller cohort sizes compared to the same courses in a lot of other universities. I talked a bit about one of those. In the centre picture there, that's me speaking at a conference about a month into my second degree here. And I got that because a staff member just bumped into me and said, would you like to pop along? I said, oh, yeah, great. The first photo there was me in my first day in general practice, which was 2-3 weeks into the course. And that was me just before I saw my first patients. And I got to see them, take histories with them. And I still remember those patients quite fondly because I got to follow them up throughout the year. And obviously the world has changed for a lot of us recently, but also they still find ways to get you stuck in. And now on the last slide for me, I realise I've spoken a lot about things, but this last slide is just a compilation of a few photos and things, because university is an experience, and I've really, really enjoyed my time here in Swansea. I still continue to enjoy it now. I joined the archery team in my first week of the course. That bottom picture there, the cursor's over. That's a photo from a student staff pub quiz, which was just a really nice way of getting to know staff members better. Another opportunity I took is I became a rep for a course, and I still do that now. And you have more interactions with students and staff that way. But generally, there's a lot of fun to be had. And I talked about the scenery before, and that was a photo from my graduation with some really beautiful scenery right on the bay there. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed my time, and the course gave me a good rooting in science, sort of clinical science, the applications of it. But actually, I had so many opportunities to go and do things that I wanted to do, and I had a lot of support for those as well. But also, I've made a lot of good memories here. And so I know other students will as well.